What's up, everybody? I am back with a new movie review, and today we'll be covering Disney's Atlantis: The Lost Empire. Before we continue, please do me a huge favor: smash that like button, follow me in the links in the descriptions below, leave a comment, let me know what you guys think. If you have seen this film before, or let me know how you felt about it, or if you haven't, do yourself a huge favor and go watch this film. Come back, let me know what you guys think. I wanted to. I was planning on reviewing this tomorrow at the time of this recording. Normally I do my movie reviews on Thursdays, but I have some business I need to take care of tomorrow evening, so I want to make sure I get this done out the way beforehand. It's kind of popped up on me, so I might as well make sure okay, let me take care of this now. Anyway, this almost made me want to watch the sequel because I don't remember how the sequel went. I know I've seen it, but I remember far more from the Lost Empire more than I do about Milo's return. And it's so ironic. Everybody remembers this being a great film, but like so many other films, it didn't do so well in the box office when it came out in 2001, the summer of 2001. But it has a great cast, but it eventually had a cult following. And if you watch this on a big IMAX type of screen, oh my god, it looks even better, but it still looks so good. It's directed by Gary Trousdale and Kirk Wise. And get this, one of the writers was Josh Whedon. We all know how we feel about that guy, but he has done good work on many type of things. He helped with the writing with this. But also when it comes to animation, one of them was Mike Mignola. The same Mike Mignola who had worked on the Hellboy comics and as well as the animated films with the angular designs of a lot of the characters and then don't get me started on the rotoscope type of look to the animation. It all looks spectacular. Even after all these years, it looks so good. And of course, the musical atmosphere. And I just love movies about treasure hunting and the swashbuckling adventure. I get a thrill out of films like that. Similar to the Indiana Jones or National Treasure or The Mummy. It's just so much fun. I get so heavily invested in films like that. So this one is no different. So it stars Michael J. Fox as Milo Thatch, a linguist and cartographer. James Garner as Commander Lyle Rourke. Cree Summer, the great Cree Summer herself, plays Kida, Princess of Atlantis, and honestly doesn't get the praise that other Disney princesses do. If you look up on my YouTube channel, I made a tier list ranking of many Disney princesses, and Kida I put on the list because she doesn't get as much love as she deserves. And I put her very high. I'm pretty sure I put her in S rank because her design is so good, so creative. It's just still stood the test of time. Many women have cosplayed her to this day. That's how much of an impact this Disney princess had over the years. It's amazing. We got Don Novello as Vinny, the Italian demolitions expert. Phil Morris as Dr. Sweet, Claudia Christian as Lieutenant Helga Sinclair, Rourke's German-born second-in-command lieutenant, Jacqueline Oberdors as Audrey. I'm having a tough time with the middle name. Just Audrey Ramirez, the Puerto Rican mechanic. Florence Stanley as Wilhelmina Packard, the elderly, sarcastic, chain-smoking radio operator. And fun fact, from what I understand, this is the last time that Disney animated film, I'm pretty sure it's just the animated film, it's the last time we actually see somebody actually smoking a cigarette in an animated format. It's just like with comic books. It's just at a certain point, because we had the whole anti-cigarette thing a long time ago, and we don't want to influence kids to smoking cigarettes because of the nicotine and everything like that. So they kind of just weed it all out entirely. So you barely see that in certain films or comics, except on certain rare occasions outside of something that's like rated R or for mature audience type of media. John Mahaney as Preston Whitmore, the eccentric millionaire who funds the expedition. Jim Varney as Jebediah Cookie Farnsworth, the Western-style chuck wagon chef. Corey Burton as Mole, the French geologist. And Leonard Nimoy as Kashikim Nidaka, the king of Atlantis and Kita's father. So, am I forgetting anything? Another fun fact. They actually got Mark Orkaran, who many Star Trekkies will be familiar with, who made or who created the Klingon language, came on board to create the Atlantean language for this film. And I thought that was very cool. They, put a lot of effort into this film. It's crazy how it didn't do so good at a box office. This should have done way better back then. Maybe just certain people didn't really appreciate I don't know, 2D animation or whatever. I'm not sure. This is one of the greatest animated films, of all time. But also I want to point out, as I rewatched this film, it has so people like what people do in Hollywood nowadays when they're trying to make everything so inclusive and it comes across so manufactured and try hard. Movies like this is like a perfect example of how to do that without having to try. Just like, organically work it into the narrative. You got these different people from different cultural backgrounds, and it's just fully accepted and fully embraced. They didn't lean so heavily like the Puerto Rican mechanic. You don't need to lean so hard as like first Puerto Rican in an animated film, PR stunt. You don't need to do all that stuff. She's just a mechanic. She ain't going on a diatribe about how how Puerto Ricans suffered and marginalized, or, Dr. Sweet ain't going over about how tough it is that, he comes from Black and, Native American background and how his people were oppressed, and he didn't do all that stuff. They didn't lean on that kind of sob stories. We just let the characters be, and we will enjoy the time and the ride with them. And that is a mark of true inclusions, when it's not, when it's organically worked into the story, and their race or gender isn't like, it's the secondary thing about them, or even third, because it's not a major thing for this particular plot. That is a mark of true inclusion. We just work into into the story organically. Like, you have like a story purposes, and you making the characters from scratch, and this is how you do it. And like, you look at it, somebody like Sweets, if he was made today, he'll be going over about how, like I said, his whole, cultural background, and he wouldn't be as funny as he is. He'll be like, stoic black man, and, and like the, Puerto Rican mechanic can do no wrong because she's like a strong, independent woman crap. It's like none of that, red carpet PC rhetoric. Just let the characters be. It comes naturally. This is how you do it, people. I'm sorry, again, I'm from a tangent, but it's just like, I'm looking at this, it's like, man, this is how we used to know how to do this, and without it being so heavy-handed. Now it's just feel like it's forced. Nowadays, if this was made today, it would seem so forced, and you can't help but have certain people roll their eyes, like, oh my God, another, Mary Sue. Oh my God, another this. Oh my God, another that. Because they, made it all about that, instead of just, have this character have layers to them beyond what their skin tone or gender is. All right, I'm off the tangent here, but I'm just saying, it's like, man, this is how you do it. Anyway, we opened up the movie very beautifully. And they interwoven the 2D animation with the 3D animation, the little bits that you get here and there with it. It's interwoven so beautifully. Sometimes you can hardly tell where one ends and one begins. And I love 2D animation. I think this day and age, we kind of use too much 3D animation, and I kind of wish we need to utilize 2D animation a lot more, because I think we slightly get more with that, or you can play around with certain things a lot more than we do with certain 3D animation, because I think that's, I won't say use it as a crutch, but you can like go over certain shortcuts than you can do with 2D animation, when a lot of it is hand drawn. Now, of course, certain movies have done a great job where they blend 2D animation with the 3D, like something like the Puss in Boots movie that came out recently. I think that and the Across the Spider-Verse films, those movies have done a great job of working in pencil into 3D animation, and it blends so beautifully. But I do long for just like those 2D animation, like Road to El Dorado and Atlantis, the Lost Empire. It just, at a certain point, it will feel like a lost art. And every time we get it, it feels like, I won't say we need to abuse it, like use it every time, but balance it out. Not everything needs to be 2D, and not everything needs to be 3D. But it just depends on what it's called for. But I think we utilize 3D kind of a lot, and we need to like kind of work back to the 2D animation, in my opinion. Anyway, we begin the film in ancient Atlantis, 6800 BC, I think is. Yeah. And a tsunami is about to hit Atlantis while it was still on the surface. And this blue crystal is pretty much the heart of the Atlantis. Sought out the queen of Atlantis, Kita's mother, as like a tribute, in a sense, in order to save at least the main capital of Atlantis. Most of it was protected, but sunk into the sea, while everything else was destroyed. And we flash forward to 1914. Man, every time I think about like a period like that, it's like, man, 20 years from now, y'all gonna have like a doozy of a war coming out. I'm pretty sure around this time you was probably still in the middle of the First World War, but y'all gonna be in it for a doozy in 20 years. Oof, God, I can't help but think about that. Every time I look at like an old Indiana Jones film, it's like, oh man, y'all in the thick of it, man. But anyway, so we meet up with Milo, who has dream of finding the city of Atlantis. And you see, like, he mapped out everything, and what he needs is like this ancient Atlantean book that he won an expedition to dig up that could lead him, to Atlantis. But his superiors at the Smithsonian, laugh him out of the room. Like, they don't believe none of that, stuff. Even though it's like, sure, they talk about how they tried to fund his stuff before, but it always come up empty. So they kind of, lost faith in him. Okay, understandable. But how many artifacts do you have in the Smithsonian where, they weren't found in the first spot that the diggers or the lead person on the expedition thought it was? It probably took a couple of tries before to find that X marks the spot. You couldn't really get that in mind, because it's like, it's not an exact science. If I'm assuming you guys know your freaking history, you would assume that that what was in one place at one point in history, over time is buried and it's probably shifts to another part of the world, either slightly or majorly, like dinosaur bones. Certain dinosaurs died in one spot, and their body, because of the, time goes by and Earth, shifts, and, the continents, what we would know as a continent isn't what they. I mean, you can look this up. Like, pick any continent and look up like where was, like, I don't know, the continent of Australia. Where would it have been during the Jurassic period? It'll be completely somewhere else entirely before, the comet hit, and like, things shifted, tides shifted, ice formations shifted, things of that nature. So what was in one place won't be there originally anymore. So it'll take a couple of tries before you eventually find the new spot where it is, settled at. You'll think they know that. I'm just saying. I'm overthinking it, but I'm just saying, because I like these kind of movies and I like history, and that kind of thing comes to mind. It's like, God, you guys should know that, or at least get some kind of archaeology to kind of that you can trust to go along with them. Anyway, he goes home and meets up with Helga, who, now, as I mentioned, I love the art designs or animation designs of a lot of these characters, and the background and atmosphere. All this stuff is like very well done. There is something about Helga where she does these facial expressions, like she got these stank face expressions that, I don't know, that puts me off a bit. Like this, I can't say, it's like a fault. It's kind of like a personal nitpick, because she's drawn exactly the way she needs to be drawn to match everything else. But it's something about those facial expressions where it's just like, I don't know. It just seems like there's something off. And it's it's like, what's going on with that face? It's got like only one. It's like an actress that needs to actually show facial ranges, and something that's happy or sad or angry or disgusted or shy or whatever like that. It has to show on the face. She only has one look, and I know it's the point of the character. She's kind of like a stoic and stuff, and she does smirk every once in a while. But I don't know. It's just something about that, the way that certain facial expressions kind of puts me off a bit, where it's like there's something off about this animation. I cannot put my finger on it. It bothers me. It's like it just doesn't match with everything else. So she works with what's that rich eccentric guy? Whitmore, who was best friends with Milo's grandfather, who was a famous explorer himself, and he was the one who got those other colorful characters that we'll meet in a moment to fund the expedition to find that book. And now that he has the book, he's like, okay, I made a bet with your grandfather a long time ago, that if he managed to find any kind of proof of Atlantis, not only I will fund the expedition, but I'll kiss him straight on the mouth. They even got a picture of that actually happening. It's like, and like photography back then, you actually had to stand still and let those powders and those giant stick things to flash and explode and take that take that photo, and you actually captured the exact moment of the disgust when he actually did it, and it's kind of like weird. But anyway, but it adds to the comedic effect. But so that Milo doesn't have like his parents, nor we figure out what happened to the parents, but I guess it's not really that important. But now he also lost his grandfather. He's pretty much all alone, and the closest, I guess, well, you wouldn't call him family. Like, you would think that Milo would have met Whitmore as a little kid when he hanging out with his grandfather, but the closest connection he has to his grandfather would be Whitmore, technically, but he's meeting him for the first time. And so he's funding the expedition, and all he wants is, one piece of proof that, Atlantis exists, just for his own benefit, and not for like the stuck up people at the Smithsonian. So Milo goes to meet up with Rourke and Helga, along with the other crew. Now they all meet up with Milo, and they give him a hard time, kind of like the nerdy kid at the lunchroom table. They kind of pick on because they're the cool kids at the table, kind of thing. Eventually they warm up to him, which thankfully it happens fast. But here's the thing that kind of confuses me: when Dr. Sweet introduces himself to Milo, he seems very cordial, friendly demeanor, and everything like that. Then a couple of scenes later, along when he's surrounded with the other cast that we'll meet, they all like kind of ostracize him a bit, and it's like, weren't you just so friendly with this dude? Seemed like like why would you that part was so confusing. Like, why would you keep him at a distance? You seemed like so friendly with him earlier, and didn't seem like a ruse or anything like that. You seem very sincere with you're friendly. So why would you act like an a-hole and distance yourself from him for no reason? Because he's the nerd of the group or something? Uh, but once they get on board this giant ship, once again the 3D animation merges so well with the 2D animation. Like the ship is like straight up 3D. It's kind of obvious. What do they call this freaking ship? I want to call it the Odyssey, but I don't think that's it. The Ulysses. Kind of close. And this movie kind of reminds me of Treasure Planet a little bit, which is another movie I want to review. I just don't know when, because like by the time October rolls around, I'm gonna be pretty booked with themed movies to review. Anyway, they get attacked by this mechanical sea, in a form of a sea creature, and it gets attacked, and the ship gets attacked, and my goodness, it's a surprising amount of a body count in this film that, as a kid, like you don't technically pay attention to that stuff because you're just in awe with like the animation and the colorful cast and everything like that. And of course, you don't appreciate the certain serious moments that's being played out. But it's like, wow, even the mechanic Ramirez had to leave a couple of dudes behind that died when she's trying to close the hatch to keep most of the place from flooding, while the rest are trying to make their escape through the escape pods. It is, dark in some cases, but of course they balance it out with certain humorous moments. But they ain't hacky with it either. You know what I mean? It's like they found the right spot to include some levity to offset the serious moment. Speaking of levity, the guy who voiced Vinny, he actually improvised a lot of his dialogue because according to the bit of information, factoids I found out, is that he reads probably the first line of the script for his character for the most part, or something akin to that, and then he kind of improvise things later, and it kind of elevates the character's comedic style, which completely worked for this film. And sometimes and of course you try stuff and it tends to work. You gotta experiment sometimes with this, and thank goodness the people behind the scenes worked with this guy, and of course he was pretty established of an actor at the time, so he get to have that bit of leeway, I guess. And of course it also helped that he was also funny. So the Doctor, Mole, and of course Mole is probably the weakest link out of the cast, honestly, because maybe young kids will find him funny, especially the whole French accent and everything like that. He's literally behaves like a mole. But there's times he's funny and other times it's I barely get a chuckle out of him. But they tell Milo around the campfire that they pretty much end this for the money, while Milo, not with just with the adventure of it all, but just finding this lost history for the first time and bringing it to light and everything like that. He's in it for the game of it all, kind of thing. Well, not the game, but you catch my drift. It's like the thrill of it all, and he's not interested in getting rich off of this, which speaks a lot to his character, and it speaks a lot to their character. But they're still redeemable characters. You'll see very soon. Soon after some run-ins with some literal fireflies, they crash into the lower depths of this cavern, and they end up Milo and the others end up bumping into an older Akita and other Atlanteans, and they soon discover the lost city of Atlantis. They meet up with the king, who tells them they gotta go, and clearly you're not, scientists, because scientists don't need to carry weapons. So he's like, you got a day, then tomorrow you guys gotta go. I do not want outsiders here. Kita takes the opportunity to hang out with Milo in order to learn about things that he knows, and he can learn about things that she knows. Because he's a linguist, he studied the book, so he learned Atlantean. But he also discovered the fact that the basis of the language, because she also spoke French, and it's like he mentions about the Tower of Babel, where they all had, like, many people had like a universal language, until, if you look up the story of the Tower of Babel, God kind of destroyed it because humanity got too hubris, and then gave them all different languages, so they can't really work together like that anymore. There's something akin to that. That's like a rough gist of it. There's more in-depth story behind all that stuff. It was all about humanity's hubris. That's the whole point of the Tower of Babel story. But humanity had, like, rumor was humanity had like a universal language they all knew, but it then kind of broken up into several different other types of languages that we probably know of today. And a couple of them were pretty much lost over time. Like, how many people really speak Latin nowadays? It's like, one of those lost art languages that we just barely hung on to. But after discovering how, like, because Kita, even though she spoke Atlantean, she can't read Atlantean, which is kind of weird in a way, because I guess if you have a kid who learned how to talk but hasn't learned how to read and write yet, I guess you can make that correlation how it just makes sense, where she can't, read her own language. But thanks to Milo, she, learns a little bit, and learn how to work their own particular technology, like one of those speeder bike things, or like pod racing type of machines, where you have these blue crystals that comes from, they're broken pieces of the heart of Atlantis, which is also the reason why they have they stay young and live such a long time after all these years. But I can't help but think about, like, okay, you got babies and young children, and clearly you got an elderly person. So it's like, okay, do y'all just reach a certain age? Do y'all just age slow? Maybe that's it, because clearly y'all grow up, and eventually you will get to an elderly state. But this is like, I'm nitpicking, like, an animation that, tells you enough, but you digging too deep and you overthinking it at a certain point. But it's just like, okay, how do you square their circle with still having babies and still having elderly people, but you're supposed to have a longevity, and clearly you utilize the technology to heal people, because Kita healed a cut on Milo's chest earlier. So it's like you just age very slow. Maybe I guess that's the whole definition of longevity, but I don't know. I'm kind of confusing it with immortality, I guess. Because I guess technically those are two different things. Longevity just means you live a lot longer than your average person, and immortality means you just never grow old entirely, and you just never die. But then this probably the biggest issue I have with this film, the whole surprise Disney villain. And like with the first Frozen movie and a couple other things, these are like a rare occasions where a villain is really not needed. It's like, why do you need like a villain? The same thing with like that movie Wish that came out a year ago. It's just like another movie where it did not need a villain, but you're forcing a villain so just to have some kind of antagonist or altercation for our characters to get over, and you couldn't just let this be just an adventure story. Because I think we gotten so far just fine up to this point. I don't think anybody was really clamoring for some type of villain. Now, it would have been a different story if you set up Rourke to be antagonistic earlier in the film, so this won't come as some kind of out of the blue nature. That should have been thought out better. I think that's like probably like, a lot of people's biggest problem with this film was that surprise villain, but it doesn't really ruin the rest of the film though. And it turns out the others were in on the fact that we're working with Rourke so we can pillage this society for their riches so we can get rich. But the only thing is they was kind of shocked to find a thriving civilization. So now they have a little bit of misgivings. Of course, Milo gives them a lecture about it later after they discovered the heart of Atlantis, and the reason was hidden away by the king because a long time ago, the reason the flood happened is just like kind of karma, because the king at that time was utilizing the heart to weaponize their tools, and it angered their deities, and so they sent a flood to kind of like a punishment in a sense. And that's where the heart, through his mercy, utilize a person of royal blood to bond with the crystal in order to protect what's most of the city. So with Rourke showing up, it happening once again. So sensing the danger, it used Kita as a tribute, enveloping her in this blue angelic light. And a weird cut happens. And here's the thing, as a little kid, I think a lot of people at that time, at that age, were expecting Kita to go Super Saiyan on these people, but she just floats downward, walks, and just submit herself to being put into a casket for transport. And it's kind of there's something you could have done with this, but you kind of skipped over a part. Maybe it was a deleted scene where she's trying to fight back, but Rourke threatens the people, so she kind of submits herself to being locked up. You just included that, it would make sense for that cut where she's just being sealed away essentially. So here Milo gives a speech about these people who you guys had dreams, but what your family and friends would think how you got this. It's this blood money essentially. So they decide not to go with Rourke and side with Milo. Kind of last minute, change of heart, but change of heart nonetheless. So As Rourke, Helga, and the other faceless troopers ride away, they blow up the bridge so Milo and the others can't follow. But Milo, at the behest of a dying king, rallies people who can fight to go find and rescue Kita. Even teaches them how to utilize their technology because they literally have the key on them in the first place. So they ride to the exit. And of course, Rourke ends up betraying Helga, tosses her off the, for lack of a better word, blimp. And as she's, literally laying, dying from clearly critical wounds because she, it was pretty high up. She used her flare gun to ignite the balloon, and as Milo and Rourke is about to, duke it out, and of course Milo being such a string bean of a person, clearly ain't, physically up to taking on Rourke, who's a battle-hardened soldier, a mercenary. Milo grabs a piece of like a irradiated shard from the casket from Kita's ability. He cuts Rourke, which caused him to turn into like a blue glass statue thing, and made this kind of very creepy wincing noise as he's being taken over, and then he gets destroyed by propellers. It's kind of graphic. As the blimp falls and sets off this chain reaction because they literally are near like a volcanic area, and as lava's starting to pour out, they manage to get Kita back to the city so she can use her ability to raise these giant golems to protect the city from the lava. And once the job was done, she separated herself from the heart, and now she's queen after her father passed, and Milo decides to stay with her, which, by the way, I'm glad they kind of established they have some kind of chemistry, but they don't do the gimmicky end of the third act kiss thing with Jake. They just like, no, they knew each other for like a day. So it would, despite the chemistry, they're not there yet, clearly. So I appreciate that. Not many movies do that nowadays. The only other movie I can think of off the top of my head that did something like this and handled it very well was the first Blade movie, where the typical female co-lead didn't really get involved with Blade at all, let alone give him some kind of third act kiss, which is like so rare we get that and is appreciated. Not that it's not nice to have in films, but it's just it's always a gutsy move and an appreciated move where you just don't either don't have it or don't rush it. If you're planning on a possible sequel, which this one clearly did, you can say that until later, kind of thing, or just kind of hint at them obviously going to get together. We can just infer the fact that clearly they're going to get it on. And I'm curious to know, I probably should do something like that on my Instagram or TikTok. Who's hotter, Kita or Shell from Road to El Dorado? I'm curious to know which one is hotter, because that is a tough one, because they both so stellar for just different reasons. But anyway, the others, get their reward for helping, even though like y'all clearly was like gung-ho at first about like pillaging this civilization, damn the consequences, until you realize that they got a thriving society and Milo gave you that speech. It's kind of like, sure, whatever. So they go home. They don't reveal the secret about what they found in Atlantis outside of Whitmore, who is left with a letter and a crystal necklace from Milo, saying his goodbyes and he was right and everything like that. So that was Atlantis: The Lost Empire. Such a fun film. Like, you're in on the ride, and it's a good ride. My biggest hiccup, honestly, is the surprise villain. The whole facial thing with Helga and the crystals empowering the longevity thing with still having old people. It's just like, those parts are nitpicks, but that surprise villain thing with Rourke is the biggest criticism I have for this film, honestly. Outside of that, this is a great film. Highly recommend you show this to your kids if you have kids, or even nieces or nephews. Show this movie to them. They will love this. The stuff that we grew up on, honestly, still, by and large, still holds up to this day, because those Disney remakes are just, by and large, except for maybe a couple of exceptions, are crap. And, like I did with my review of the animated Lion King film, as I said there, if you want to show a Lion King film, clearly show them the animated one. Do not waste their brain cells of showing them a crappy live action version. The Renaissance Disney films, the early 2000s Disney films, those are highly still recommended. And of course, there are Disney films in the past several years that are very well done and not like your Disney remake crap. It's like, you got Coco was very good, Encanto was very good, obviously Frozen was very good, Brave, those obviously still hold up and are very well done. Moana, very well done. Of course, they are already doing like a freaking sequel to that, and a live action version of it, which I'm not too concerned about the sequel, because clearly that's probably going to be doing well. I just don't care for any live action and, remaster or remake or something of that. It's like, it's not even like a nostalgic yet. Typically, you give a movie 10 years, bare minimum, for it to be considered like nostalgic. But it's just mostly, I think, 7 years old, Moana. But anyway, I will see you guys in a few minutes as I go over my review of season 4 of The Batman. But let me know in the comments below what you think of Atlantis: The Lost Empire. I'm highly considering, reviewing Milo's Return, because I probably want to do that before, because at least a couple of more movies I want to, I want to review before October rolls around, so I might be able to squeeze in Milo's Return. I might do that because I'm all too interested in revisiting that film, because I completely forgot the plot of that. Clearly the title says Milo's Return, but return for what? Don't know, can't remember. I know I've seen it, but it just probably did not leave an, it's probably something happening with that where it doesn't leave an impact like the first one. So yeah, I probably want to check it out before I really get down to the holiday theme months starting in October. But anyway, I will see you guys soon. Take care. Have a great weekend. Peace.